Okay, the next accessory I'm going to take off is the fuel pump. It's right here. And to be honest with you, these AN fittings, I have never dealt with those, so I'm going to have to figure out how the best way to disconnect those are. But that supplies fuel to the carburetor. The one thing I do want to point out here is this bolt right in here. That bolt, right now its purpose is to provide a seal so there's no oil leak. However, what you need to do when you're reinstalling a fuel pump is there's a push rod in there that rides on the camshaft or the crankshaft, I'm not sure which. But I think it's the camshaft because it's got to have a lobe on it. But that push rod goes in and out, and it actuates a lever on the fuel pump, and that's what causes the pumping action. When you go to reinstall the fuel pump, what you do is you take out that bolt and you put in a longer bolt. You put your push rod in and you just tighten that bolt, just hand tight, enough to hold that push rod up so it's not in your way while you're trying to install the fuel pump. It makes it a lot easier to get the fuel pump in if you know that trick. Okay, it wasn't too hard to figure out. This piece in here is a union. All I did was held that and loosened this. Comes out. This is tied to the spreader bar, which I pulled up out of the way just so we could see better. I'll just snip that, and then I'll take looks like probably a 9/16 wrench. Should be 2 bolts on the fuel pump, and that should be out. Okay, a 9/16 socket is the correct one there. A 3-inch extension gets you past the fuel pump so that you can get in there and actually turn your wrench. Once I remove those bolts, that fuel pump will come right off. Okay, just a couple more things to take off. I put the fuel pump back on because I didn't want oil to run out of that oil pump mounting place, or fuel pump mounting place, while I was doing the compression check. So that's going to come off. That's a 9/16 inch wrench or socket. I've got a 3/8 extension there, or a 3-inch extension rather, on my 3/8 drive. And that seems to be a good option for that nut, or that bolt. That one's going to take a little time, so I'm going to do that while the video is off. And then there's a ground strap that goes from the engine side of the motor mount with a 9/16 inch bolt there, holding it on, and it goes to this front side of the engine mount bracket with a 7/16 inch bolt through the bracket. So I'll need 7/16 inch wrench on each side of that to go ahead and get that off. One of my favorite tools is the long extension, because there are so many times when there's all kinds of stuff in the way that you can't get to a screw to turn it with a wrench. And if you can get a shot through there with your long extension, No problem whatsoever. That was the oil pump bolt that was coming at. Now I'm going to take the other one out, which I've already loosened considerably. So it should come out easy. And there's the fuel pump. This is the lever that the rod that rides against the cam pushes against. And you recall us talking about the nut, or the bolt rather, that is up in the front here to hold that rod up. I'm going to get in a little closer to the picture because there is a plate on there. I'm going to leave it on for now. It's holding the rod up in place. So I'm going to leave that there until it's time to put the fuel pump back on probably. And I'll have to take and replace the gasket underneath it and the one between it and the fuel pump. So fuel pump's off. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to go after the motor mount bolts. But before we do that, I'm going to take the time to hook up my lift, my hoist. I have already bolted chains onto the engine block, or the heads actually. And once we get that hooked up and in position, then we'll explain more about the next steps in the process.